I used to think love was enough. That if two people truly saw each other, really saw each other, all the rest could be figured out. And for a while, I believed that's what I had with her. Her name was Claire. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party, of all places. I wasn't supposed to be there, just covering for a buddy who bailed, but she walked in wearing this navy blue dress and laughing like she didn't care who was listening. And I swear, the whole room turned colder the second she smiled at me. We clicked fast. First date turned into every weekend. By month 2, we were talking about vacations. By 6, we were splitting groceries. She was sharp, sarcastic, a little too smart for me if I'm being honest, but she made me feel calm. Like I didn't have to impress anyone. She said I grounded her. That I was the first person who made her feel safe. I held on to that for dear life. Claire came from a different world, private school, ski trips, summer homes, that kind of thing. Her family had money, though they didn't exactly flash it. They were the kind who talked in quiet, loaded statements. Polished. Reserved. Polite to your face and icy behind your back. At first, I didn't notice it. Or maybe I didn't want to. The first time I met her parents, I showed up in a button-down I thought looked pretty decent. Her dad opened the door and said, "Nice to meet you, Tyler. Claire said you worked in logistics." The tone didn't register right away, but then her mom chimed in, "We love that you're so grounded." That word again. Grounded. Like a houseplant. Claire must have seen something flicker on my face because she brushed her hand against mine under the table that night. We sat through roast chicken and some wine I pretended to understand, while her parents asked questions that felt more like applications. Do you plan to stay in your current position? How did your parents meet? What neighborhood did you grow up in again? I told myself they were just curious. Protective, maybe. She was their only daughter, after all. Later that night, I brought it up. Not as a complaint, just a passing comment like, "Your parents ask a lot of questions." She shrugged and said, "They're just like that. Don't let it get in your head." And I didn't. Or I tried not to. I loved her. That was the only math that mattered. When she said yes to my proposal 9 months later, it felt like I was finally on solid ground. Like I was building something real, something lasting. I called my mom from the car, still shaking with adrenaline, and she cried so hard she had to hang up. The engagement was quick, 6 months from proposal to date. Claire wanted something simple but elegant. A vineyard outside town, small guest list, nothing over the top. I was in. I didn't care if we got married in a parking lot. I just wanted to call her my wife. But with each planning meeting, her family's involvement started to feel less like help and more like control. Her mother took over the decor. Her sister redid our playlist. Her dad vetoed the catering we chose and brought in his preferred contact. And through it all, I kept trying to play nice. At one point, I offered to handle the rehearsal dinner venue. Something small, maybe the Italian place near where we first kissed. Claire smiled and said, "That's sweet, but my parents already booked a place." When I asked what they booked, she said, "Don't worry, it's nicer." That's when the pattern really started sinking in. Every time I tried to contribute, I got overridden. Every time I asked a question, I got a smile and a new version of, "We've got it covered." It was like I'd been cast in someone else's play and handed a script I didn't write. I told myself it was normal. That maybe this is just how weddings go when families get involved. That Claire loved me, and that was the only vote that mattered. But I'd be lying if I said the cracks weren't starting to show. There was one dinner at her parents' place, just a casual Thursday night kind of thing. Her brother made a toast halfway through the meal, holding up his wine glass and grinning like a guy who thought he was hilarious. "To Claire," he said, "for marrying down. Balance in all things." Everyone laughed. Even Claire. She gave him this little half-smile, like she didn't want to encourage it, but also didn't want to scold him. I laughed too, but it sounded hollow even to me. My face burned. After dinner, when we were driving home, I brought it up. Just said, "That was a weird joke." She looked out the window and said, "He was just messing around. Don't take everything so personally." And maybe that's when I felt the first real crack. Not just with them, but with her. Because I wasn't taking it personally. I was taking it seriously. After that night at her parents', I started noticing things I used to excuse. Little comments that had always been there, tucked under polite tones and practiced smiles, but now they landed different, harder, sharper. Like they were never jokes to begin with, just truths dressed up in laughter. We were picking out invitations a few weeks later when her mom walked into the shop unannounced. Just showed up, said she happened to be in the area, then proceeded to flip through the samples like she was leading the process. I had picked out one I liked, simple, dark ink, cream background, no frills. She took one look at it and said, "It's quaint." Claire didn't say anything. Just turned the page. I asked her later, in the car, do they have to be involved in every single decision? She didn't look up from her phone. Just said, they're paying for most of it. It's their way of helping. Helping. That word got tossed around a lot. But it never felt like help. It felt like being managed. The next few weeks were a blur of decisions that didn't feel like mine. We had agreed on a local band for the reception, someone I actually knew from high school, but her sister shot it down in the group chat. Said it was a little too small town. Claire never responded. Just booked someone else. At one point, her dad offered to pay for us to take engagement photos at a country club his friend owned. Sounded generous, until we got there and I realized it was mostly for appearances. He showed up in a blazer to oversee the shoot. Gave tips to the photographer like he was directing a commercial. Make sure you get the ring. Let's try one where Claire looks at the camera and he looks at her. Symbolism. I smiled. I posed. I played along. But every click of the shutter made me feel smaller. Like I wasn't a person anymore, just a prop they tolerated for her sake. There was one moment, though. One that still sticks with me, even now. It was a brunch with her extended family. Casual, loud, lots of clinking glasses and scrambled eggs nobody touched. Her aunt asked about my job, and before I could finish explaining, her cousin interrupted with, "Logistics? So like, you're a box guy." I smiled, tried to keep it light. Not exactly. I oversee operations for a chain of distributors, lots of moving parts. He grinned. Moving boxes. Everyone laughed. That's when I felt it, under the table, her hand slid over mine. She squeezed it. Just once. Gentle. Not possessive or protective, just, there. And then she let go. She didn't say anything out loud. Didn't shut it down. Just went back to sipping her mimosa like nothing happened. Later that night, I brought it up. Not to fight, just to ask. I felt like I was being picked apart at that table. Like a bug under glass. She looked tired. They don't mean anything by it. They don't have to. You know what it means. She sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing her temples. I was trying not to escalate things. That line stayed with me for days. Not escalate. Like defending me would have been dramatic. Like her silence was the compromise. That was the moment I stopped assuming she'd ever take my side. The rehearsal planning came next, and that's when the divide really started to show. Her mom insisted on a specific caterer. Her sister wanted to coordinate wardrobe. Her dad booked the dinner without asking me. I'd wanted something simple, just family and a few friends. But instead, it was a formal dinner with printed menus and waitstaff in black vests. I showed up early, dressed too sharp for who I am, sweating through a blazer I hated. Walked in and saw everything already arranged, place cards, a slideshow running in the corner, her dad greeting guests like a campaign fundraiser. I didn't recognize a single detail. Halfway through the meal, her cousin, the same one from the brunch, raised a glass. To Tyler, he said, smiling too wide. For marrying up, and hopefully learning to keep up. Scattered laughter. I laughed too. Short, bitter, quiet. Claire didn't. She just looked down at her plate and moved a piece of chicken around with her fork. Later that night, I asked her point blank, "Do you think I'm good enough for your family?" She looked at me like I'd asked her if the sky was green. Why would you say that? I don't know. Maybe because they act like I'm your fixer-upper project. She was quiet. Then said, "I love you." Isn't that enough? It was the right thing to say. But the wrong way to say it. Because love, real love, doesn't hide behind silence. It speaks up. It shows up. And I was starting to realize, she never did. I didn't sleep much the night before the rehearsal dinner. I kept cycling through old conversations, things I should have said, ways I could have drawn a line sooner. But every time I got close to admitting how bad it felt, I'd pull back. Because if I really let myself say it out loud, they don't respect me. And she lets it happen, then I'd have to ask why I was still going through with this at all. The rehearsal dinner was held at this upscale restaurant downtown, marble floors, gold fixtures, everything dripping with formality. Her dad had booked a private room with 2 servers and a wine menu thicker than a Bible. I walked in and felt like I'd wandered into someone else's life. There were printed menus with our names on them. Not mine, exactly, just Claire and guest. One of the servers caught my look and quickly swapped mine out with a corrected version. Probably an oversight. Probably. The night played out like a carefully staged performance. Speeches, handshakes, overly firm hugs. Her dad did this whole bit about how proud they were to welcome someone new into the fold. He looked at me when he said it, but it felt like he was reading from cue cards. Then her uncle stood up. Loud voice, wine-drunk confidence. "Let's raise a glass to Tyler," he said, turning to me with that too friendly grin. "May he always remember he's the luckiest man in the room. And may he rise to the occasion, if you know what I mean." Laughter rolled through the room like a wave. I felt every eye on me. I smiled, nodded, lifted my glass. Took a sip I didn't taste. I found Claire's eyes across the table. She was already looking away. We left in separate cars that night. She stayed behind to catch up with her cousins. Said she needed girl time. I walked to my car in silence, suit jacket slung over my shoulder like a costume I couldn't wait to shed. Back at the hotel, I sat on the edge of the bed with the ring box in my hand, unopened. I didn't even realize I was shaking until I saw the way the light bounced off the lid. She came in 2 hours later, kicked off her heels, and collapsed onto the bed without saying much. I sat there for a minute before asking, "Do you want to talk about tonight?" She blinked at the ceiling. "What about it? Do you think that was okay? The way they talked to me?" She exhaled. "They were just having fun, but it wasn't meant to be cruel. I don't care what they meant. I care what they said. And I care that you didn't say anything." She rolled onto her side, eyes soft but tired. "Tyler, if I fight them on every little thing, it becomes a war. I'm trying to keep the peace. This is one night." "No," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. "It's every night. It's been every night since we got engaged." She sat up, pushed her hair back, and for a second I saw something. Fear, maybe. Or maybe just exhaustion. "Do you want to call this off?" I didn't answer right away. She stood up and walked to the bathroom. "Because if you don't trust that I love you enough to look past their flaws, then I don't know what we're even doing anymore." That stung. Not because she was wrong, but because I realized. I was starting to doubt it. I didn't know if she loved me, or the version of me that she could smooth out for her family's comfort. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each car that passed outside. I thought about my mom, how when she met Claire, she hugged her so tightly and said, "She's going to take good care of you." And I'd believed it. I'd held on to that like a promise. But now, lying there next to someone I barely recognized, I felt more like a guest in my own life than a groom. The next morning, she was already up and out by the time I stirred. Left a note on the counter, "Bridal prep starts at 9. See you at the venue. Love you." 3 words that felt like placeholders. I sat there, still in the same clothes, the city waking up outside my window, and realized I was no longer sure if showing up was strength, or surrender. The morning of the wedding felt like watching a storm from inside a glass house. I could see everything rushing around me, movement, noise, emotion, but nothing actually touched me. I woke up to my phone buzzing with texts, missed calls, updates from the planner, messages from her dad about timing. Claire hadn't messaged me directly. Just a single forwarded text from her sister saying hair and makeup were running late. I sat in the hotel room staring at the wall, fully dressed except for the tie. I'd been holding it in my hands for over 10 minutes without even trying to put it on. It felt like a leash. Eventually, I forced myself up, washed my face in the bathroom sink, and went downstairs. The venue was beautiful. Stupidly beautiful. Long rows of white chairs on the lawn, a soft breeze that made the flowers sway just enough to look like a movie. The kind of place that made you forget your own doubts, at least for a little while. Claire's family had spared no expense. Staff in tuxes, photographers darting around like paparazzi, guests milling about in designer suits. I found the groomsmen gathered near the side entrance, laughing, checking their watches, slapping me on the back like it was all a game. "Still time to run, man," one of them joked, grinning. Another added, "If you can survive her dad, you can survive anything." They were laughing. I wasn't. I walked into the groom's suite and closed the door behind me. Silence. Just the faint hum of air conditioning and the sound of my own breathing. My suit hung perfectly on me, tailored down to the inch, but I felt like a mannequin. I looked at the mirror in front of me and saw a man I didn't recognize. He looked like he belonged there. But I didn't. That's when the door opened. Her brother walked in, adjusting his cufflinks like he owned the room. "Hey," he said casually, "just came to see if you needed anything." I didn't answer. He stood there for a second, then leaned against the counter, looking at me through the mirror. "It's kind of crazy, huh? Claire getting married. I always figured she'd end up with someone a little more polished." I turned slightly, my hands tightening around the tie. He smirked. "I mean, look, you're not a bad guy. But let's be honest. You come from a mess. You've admitted it. Your dad, your whole family, it's a lot. So just, don't screw this up. She's cleaning up a lot by choosing you." I froze. He didn't know what he was doing. Or maybe he did. What hit me wasn't the insult itself, it was what it echoed. Months earlier, I'd told Claire, in one of the most raw conversations we'd ever had, that I used to be terrified of becoming my father. That every time I made a mistake, I could hear his voice in my head calling me worthless. That deep down, a part of me still worried I'd never be enough for someone like her. And now her brother had taken that same wound and jammed a finger straight into it. I didn't speak. I didn't move. He clapped me on the shoulder and left like he'd just offered sage advice. When the door shut, I finally looked back at the mirror. My hands moved automatically, tie around the collar, twist, loop, pull. But then I paused. Looked at myself. And something broke. I stared at that reflection like I was looking at a stranger. Some polite, muted version of me trying to pass for someone else. Someone acceptable. Someone who'd spent months trying to earn his place at a table that was never set for him. I finished tightening the knot. Then, slowly, I undid it, pulled the tie off, set it on the counter, and walked out of the room. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't tell anyone. I just walked, fast and quiet, out the side door and through the lot. No one stopped me. I passed a florist trimming an archway. A busboy lighting candles. The breeze felt colder now, sharp against my face. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without flinching. I got in my car. Sat there for a second, then turned the key and left. No dramatic exit. No speech. Just silence. My phone started buzzing before I hit the highway. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again, and again. Texts from Claire, missed calls from her dad, her sister, the wedding planner. I turned it off. By the time the ceremony was supposed to start, I was halfway out of the city, driving with no destination. The sky was starting to cloud over, like even the weather was tired of pretending it was a perfect day. I pulled off at some gas station an hour away, parked, and sat in the car until the engine ticked cool. I felt nothing and everything at once. Not relief, not yet, but something like the beginning of peace. The texts kept coming for days. I turned my phone back on the next morning, and it nearly froze from the flood. Missed calls, voicemails, group messages. Some were frantic. Others were venom in digital form. Her dad called me a coward. Her sister said I humiliated the family. Her brother didn't message me at all. And Claire. Claire sent 3 texts. The first said, "Where are you?" The second, "We can fix this. Please don't let them win." The third came later that night. I didn't know how to stop them. "I thought you loved me enough to push through it." That one sat in my chest like a stone. Push through it. Like love was supposed to mean swallowing humiliation on command. Like it was my responsibility to endure disrespect because she couldn't confront it. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her. I didn't. Not even close. That's what made it so complicated. If she'd been cruel, if she'd been calculating, maybe it would have been easier to walk away. But she wasn't. Claire wasn't malicious, she was passive. Quiet. And that silence had cut deeper than anything her family ever said. I stayed at a motel for 2 nights, just off the highway. Clean enough, nothing special. The kind of place where nobody asks questions and everyone minds their own business. I watched the ceiling fan spin for hours. Rented a movie I didn't finish. Ordered food I barely touched. On the 3rd day, I drove home. My apartment still had the framed photo of us at the beach sitting on the entry table. Her jacket still hung in the closet. It didn't look like someone had left. It looked like someone had vanished. I didn't hear from her again for almost a week. Then one night, she called. I let it go to voicemail. She left one message. Her voice was even. No tears. Just tired. She said, "I hope you know I loved you. I really did. I still do. But I couldn't fight them and fight you at the same time." A pause. Then, maybe I should have fought harder. And that was it. I played it once. Deleted it. Never heard from her again. Friends started reaching out slowly. A couple of mine had been at the venue when word spread that I wasn't showing up. Some were confused. Others were angry on my behalf. My best friend, David, just shook his head when I told him everything. You didn't leave her, he said. You left the version of yourself you were turning into. That hit harder than I expected. Because it was true. I'd spent months trying to shrink myself. To be acceptable. Polished. Quiet enough to fit into their world without pushing back. I'd stopped bringing up my job. I stopped inviting her to my family's get-togethers. I stopped asking her to stand up for me. I became the kind of man they'd tolerate, and lost the man she said she loved. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a wake-up call. In the weeks that followed, I started picking up the pieces slowly. Went back to work. Started running again. Talked to my mom on the phone more than usual. She didn't ask for details, just said, I'm proud of you. You know who you are. That matters. One night, about 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I found myself at this diner I used to go to in college. Sat in the corner booth, coffee steaming in front of me, quiet music playing through dusty speakers. It wasn't dramatic. No grand epiphany. Just a moment where I looked around and thought, I'm still here. I didn't fall apart. A waitress came by, probably close to my age, and asked if I was okay. I smiled, nodded. Yeah, I said. Better than I've been in a long time. And I meant it. Not because everything was healed, but because, for the first time in months, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I wasn't waiting to be accepted, or walking on eggshells, or trying to smile through someone else's discomfort. I was just, me. And that was enough.